This is Jason J. Rock Houston, and you're listening to This Is Metal. And of course, my co-host, as always, is singer Joe Lawson from the bands Scream King and Dragon Lore. Welcome to the show once again, Joe. And tonight we're talking all things Sebastian Bach. And
thanks for having me.
Yeah, great. You're my co-host, so you're here every week with me. So since we're going to be talking about Sebastian Bach, we're also going to be talking about the fact that this is the 30th anniversary of the debut Skid Row album. So I'm sure, like a lot of people, like myself, Joe, that was kind of your introduction to Skid Row 30 years ago, that debut album.
Yeah, for sure.
So talk about how you got exposed to Skid Row. Was it hearing "I Remember You"? Was it "Youth Gone Wild"? What was the first your first introduction to them?
My first introduction to them was the debut album, "Youth Gone Wild."
Yeah.
I heard it and I thought, wow, this is really good. Who the hell is this? I mean, it sounded similar to other bands
at that
in
time,
certain ways,
yeah.
but it didn't. But it was disconnected and it had its own identifiable sound,
Oh yeah, definitely. So, I mean, it was had an identical sound. Now, I remember at the time thinking kind of like when I heard the song "Youth Gone Wild," I thought, wow, man, this song it's a great anthem. It's a great battle cry. It's almost kind of their "Welcome to the Jungle."
Yeah. It that first record really put them on the map as far as the band and the first Sebastian Bach as well.
Yeah, and very little was known about any of those guys prior to that day. I mean, I guess Sebastian Bach had a little bit of pre-Skid Row fame. He was in a band called it's escaping my mind, but yeah, he was in
Madam X, I think.
Yeah, Madam X, yeah. And it also featured the drummer from Vixen, Roxy Petrucci. So he had a little pre-Skid Row fame. I guess they're a little bigger in Canada. And I guess if you want to check them out, you can still find them on. You get some of their stuff, I think, off of Amazon and that. So I definitely urge you guys to check that out. But yeah, I think for a lot of people, it was that debut album, and the three songs, I mean, even 30 years later when we talk about Skid Row, the three songs I think that come instantly to mind are "Youth Gone Wild," "I Remember You," and "18 in Light."
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, they're all Billboard charts and and the like, So.
And if you dig a little more into the band's history, I think a lot of people will be surprised to learn that Sebastian Bach wasn't the one that wrote any of those songs. It was the bass player Rachel Bolan and David Snake Sabo. They're basically the main songwriters in the band. And kind of Sebastian was the voice, very much like Pete Townsend did in The Who, and Roger Daltrey was the voice. But it's kind of interesting because, Sebastian's on the first three albums, but they've been, as many singers they've gone through, they've been able to maintain a level of success, even without him.
Yeah, they moved on without him with a few different singers. I don't know how to pronounce the guy's name.
I know who you're talking. Yeah, it starts with a Z.
The guy is amazingly good. I mean, he's a great singer, man.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there's from the fans there's such a demand for have a original Skid Row reunion, and I don't know why, but none of the guys seem that interested in reuniting with Sebastian. I've heard Rachel Bolan, who's one of the founding members, say, no, we just really don't want to ever work for that guy again. I don't care how much money you offer us. We're happy doing what we're doing.
Yeah. It was, it was a bad split for those guys as well. And, first of all, give credit due. The band is very, very talented. I love Skid Row. I think they're an awesome band. And Sebastian Bach as well. I mean, he's, easily one of the most talented singers in rock, in my opinion. But, that aside, the guy's been, for a lack of better words, I mean, the guy's just been all over the place with ridiculous statements and just treating people like shit.
I agree with you as far as
his reputation's starting to outweigh his talent.
It's sad because I will say the guy is a huge talent, and even interesting in the Sebastian Bach story is that he's put out a lot of great solo albums, but even if you look at the credits on the solo albums, he gets, of course, writing credit because they're solo albums, but he has a lot of guys come in and co-write with him, and so I don't know what he did, if he used to do like a true solo album where he wrote everything. I'm not sure what that would sound like, but I think my favorite solo album he's put out, there's one called Angel Down. It's kind of a almost blown on metal, but the guy is definitely talented, but I agree that he's an egomaniac. He's a bit of an ego bag, and if you've heard any of the recent news going around about him, it's like, what is this guy doing? Okay, I guess you're trying to get yourself in the news, but maybe let's work on getting some new music out there. I mean,
right.
One of the recent things he was that's going on around about him, he was calling out Stephen Pearcy, the lead singer in Rat, because he seen a picture of him and he wasn't wearing a mask. I mean,
another Dr. Fauci.
Yeah, I mean, instead of talking about music you've made or you're making, you're calling out other people. You're trying to shame other people. I mean, what's that about?
Yeah. I mean, everybody's got an opinion, I guess, but you know what they say about that.
Yeah.
So.
And it's funny because in preparing for this today, Joe, I also, I guess Sebastian Bach, he was having a war of words with Michael Sweet, the singer from Stryper, Christian rock band.
Yeah.
Like 4 years ago, where Michael Sweet, the whole feud got started because Michael Sweet posted a video of some girl doing a cover of I Remember You, and he simply gave his opinion, which was, this girl rocks this song. She's, in my opinion, she's better than the original singer. And then Sebastian fires back, Michael effing Sweet has a big effing mouth, and he needs to shut it or something to that effect. And so my thing with that is, okay, Sebastian, you're shaming people for not wearing a mask, but yeah, when somebody gives opinion about you, you can't take it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, again, a lot of these people just got to find themselves relevant. They're desperate for attention, and they got to open their mouth and say stupid shit about people. Whatever.
Yeah. I mean, that's my whole thing is if you're gonna criticize people, take a good hard look in the mirror. And I guess his most recent thing is he's in a feud with Chris Jericho. I don't know if you know who Chris Jericho is.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, but he's got this band Fozzy. And he first found fame as a wrestler, and Sebastian's like trying to call him out, saying that that he wants to have a sing-off or something. He's like, "You're not a real singer. When you play your concerts, you use backing tapes. F you, man. And wrestling isn't rock and roll." And I kind of disagree. I'm not a huge wrestling fan, but wrestling is very much rock and roll. If you know what I mean, Joe. I mean. They put on a show.
Yeah. I mean, again, that's just another
opinion,
example. Of why his reputation is becoming what it's becoming.
Yeah.
I mean, I know for a while there he had a pretty serious drinking problem. And that kind of didn't help matters.
Yeah.
I think I remember seeing a reality show with him on it.
I know what you're talking about. It was on VH1. I forget what it was called, but he had a band with like Scotty Ian, Ted Nugent, and I think Scott and Jason Bonham, and I think they called it Democracy. They were supposed to like form a band, like create some kind of album or something. It never really happened, I guess, because he was even on that. He was always creating issues.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's just funny because, like you said, this guy's got a huge talent, but he lets it go to waste, and I think it's very sad because, like, even in the current state with COVID-19, everything being locked down, he could take the time to, like a lot of these guys, even like you, Joe, and okay, we can't perform, but I'm going to spend my time writing and creating new music, and we'll spend our time on that.
Right, which is a perfect introduction to my story with Sebastian.
I'd love to hear that.
I never met him.
Yeah.
But we were scheduled to play several shows.
Yeah.
At a venue here in Illinois, and the club owner really liked us, and did what she could for the band, and Sebastian Bach was somebody she was having come around, and she tried to tell him. Actually, this is back in the day when people did this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And she wanted to have us on the bill on the show with him, and he threw the CD back at her and said, "I'm not having some local band open up for me."
Oh,
without ever even knowing who we were, listening to a single note, nothing.
Wow,
So just basically spit in her face, It's just like, wow, never mind me or my band.
Yeah.
It's the point of him not even giving the club owner that respect.
I mean, what?
Hey, I'll check it out, or okay, whatever, I mean. I mean, you think you're so untouchable that.
What
you're not going to have you're not even going to check out an opening act.
What an ego!
When a club owner is recommending them.
Yeah. What an ego bag. I mean,
right.
I mean, he's a huge talent, like I said. But if you know anything about the Skid Row story, he got lucky. I mean, like I said, Skid Row is a band from New Jersey. I don't know how he eventually, but he was originally from Canada, like I said, and the way Skid Row kind of got their big break was the fact that their lead guitar player Dave the Snake Sabo, he knew John Bon Jovi because they went to high school together, I guess, in New Jersey, and John kind of gave his like you were saying, John gave his friend's band a break. I think opening for them on Bon Jovi's New Jersey tour. That's how they got their big break. So Sebastian, as talented as you are, you need to kind of check yourself.
And Doc McGee, he's another guy that's been famous for breaking bands, and working with bands like Kiss, Bon Jovi, Motley Crue.
Yeah, that's how they got hooked up with. That's how they got hooked up with him.
Doc took Skid Row under his wing, and Skid Row was one of his bands, and he did a great job, getting them out there and putting them on tours and managing them.
Yeah, and I'll tell you another funny story, kind of not related to Sebastian Bach, but a few weeks ago we were talking about Dee Snider, and since we did that show, Joe, he released that live album I was telling you was going to come out, and it's a pretty nice package because I got mine off of Amazon, but it's like you get a Blu-ray, a DVD, it's got some nice bonus features, and then you get an audio CD with it, and it's a lot of like Twisted Sister material. It's got some songs off the for the Love of Metal album, kind of like live versions in that, and you get a little bit of everything, and it's kind of a cool package. But there's an interview on the DVD section I was watching last night where Dee Snider was talking about when Twisted Sister was first breaking, like in the early 80s, and they got the big opportunity to open for Motorhead, like in England, and that's where Lemmy's from, and they'd never met Lemmy until this day or something, and Lemmy told the promoter, I want to introduce these guys, I want to be one to bring them out on stage, and then he said after Lemmy watched their show, he went to the dressing room and told Dee Snider, he goes, I introduced you, man. I want you now to get up on stage and introduce me. I mean,
wow.
How cool is that? Yeah. but yeah, it's totally amazing. And talking about Skid Row too, and this being their 30th anniversary. I know before the pandemic and all this, and the live performance to stopped everybody from performing live. Sebastian was planning to do like a solo tour celebrating the 30th anniversary of this debut album. Now, it's quite an accomplishment. That I can't believe it's been 30 years since that album came out. But
wow.
But what do you think about this guy's got a solo career, and let's be honest, when people bring up the name Sebastian Bach, they're more interested in Skid Row than probably the latest Sebastian Bach solo album, as good as it may be. But what do you think of a guy like this, kind of living off of his past? You know what I mean?
Right. Well, a couple of things. One, in a sense, that's kind of not his fault.
Yeah.
As much as I hate to say that, 'cause I really don't like the guy.
Yeah.
But it's one of those situations again, like we talked about before.
Yeah.
When you get in a band and you hit that
peak.
hit that level,
Yeah.
that level of success, it's kind of a blessing and a curse, because you're forever related to that. You're forever linked to that album that you put out, or that success that made you who you are. And and that's what people want. That's what people think of. That's what people remember, whether you're sick of it or not. Guess what? You're stuck with it.
Yeah, it's not so much being sick of it. Like, I guess it's kind of like there's some bands that like. Let's be honest. If you were to go see the latest incarnation of Guns N' Roses, kind of like what you're saying, as much as you might want to hear a few songs off of Chinese Democracy, you're probably not going to get that,
Right, yeah. Most fans, they're going. They want to hear the hits from Appetite for Destruction. Sure.
Yeah, and then it's kind of interesting because, like I was saying, 30 years since that debut album, and when people bring up Skid Row, even as good as the new stuff is too, they a lot of fans just want to. A lot of fans think that Skid Row ended after those first 3 albums because he did 3 albums with them. The third album, in my opinion, it had some good stuff on there. It had a little more of a heavier edge, but it wasn't as good as the first 2. So even though he did only 3 albums with the band, I think in those 3 albums they said quite a lot,
Right.
And if you look at the second album, "Slave to the Grind," that was even people loved that because I think when they did that tour, they toured with Guns N' Roses, they toured with Pantera, and if you listen to stuff on "Slave to the Grind," it was a lot heavier, whereas the debut was a little more poppier. Yeah, a little more radio friendly. And are you surprised, like when you were first getting into Skid Row, were you surprised when they had that success they did with the debut album that they didn't kind of continue in that vein? They went in a even heavier direction.
I was pleasantly surprised. That's just that's, to me, that's one of my favorite rock albums, "Slaves of the Grind." I mean, it's heavy. It's easily by far the best vocals I've heard Sebastian Bach ever do.
Yeah, and then it's kind of funny because, like we were saying, back then too, MTV was a big part of promoting those bands and those albums at that time, and they were all over MTV. I mean, you'd not just see them on Headbangers Ball; they'd be in heavy rotation throughout the entire day. And that was one of the bands that was heavily promoted on MTV. And I think a lot of it had to do with, let's be honest, the way Sebastian looked.
Right.
Yeah.
Also, did you know that in 2003, Sebastian tried out for Velvet Revolver before they got Scott Weiland?
Oh, I never heard that, but wow.
Yeah, they said that they turned him down, but Slash said because they sounded like Skid Roses.
Yeah, I guess the closest I heard they ever got to actually replacing Scott Weiland was they were really heavily considering Corey Taylor from Slipknot, but then they kind of decided, well, he's already known for Slipknot, and that's going to be kind of weird.
Right.
Yeah, but so those first 3 Skid Row albums, that's what they're known for, and like I said, Sebastian's a huge talent, and I can't tell you that I don't have any of his solo albums in my collection because I do, and I think he's a great live performer. But I think these days he's more in the news for his little antics and trying to get likes or whatever. Very sad, very sad. And I think that's kind of while Sebastian Bach may be in the news more than the other guys in Skid Row, they kind of like Aerosmith saying, "Let the music do the talking."
Yeah, exactly, and that's the way it should be. I think that it's great that they went on and they still have a career and they found a guy that fits them real well. And post COVID, I hope they find a lot of success with moving on.
Yeah. Now, in your years of touring, Joe, you mentioned having that one experience with Sebastian where you never actually met the man, but you kind of had dealings with him behind the scenes. Kind of. Did you ever run into any of the Skid Row guys?
No, that's a band I never crossed paths with, and they were out doing their thing, really truthfully before I was. So, I was kind of emerging, kind of more towards the latter years of Sebastian Bach's run with Skid Row.
Yeah, And now as a fan, I got to ask you, because like since they parted with Sebastian, I've kind of lost count. I think they've had like 3 or 4 singers. But like when you're in a band and they're constantly changing lead singers that often, does it kind of make it hard? Like when you do go out and do a live show, do you think, as perform yourself, Joe, or a singer yourself?
Yeah, because
like
the band's
what are we going to perform?
Struggling and searching for an identity is what that means.
Yeah. And see, I think Skid Row is one of those bands. As big as they became, I mean, I think they've reached their peak. If you know what I mean, I think they could have been much bigger if it was Sebastian Bach or anyone, but they just had maybe 1 or 2 singers. Because I don't know what happened with the second singer, Johnny Solinger. I mean, he was in there for like 10, 13 years, and they just kind of parted ways with him. They didn't never really get into why, but I think they could have, even with him, had more of an identity. But that's the thing. I think they're struggling to have an identity, because even 4 singers, it's got to be hard to create a set list to do that.
Again, I think after Bach, like I said, that they were looking for the right guy, and they had their own ideas of what that was, and it took a while to find somebody that could pull it off and be responsible, and and like with any band, it's tough to find people that take it seriously. I mean, a lot of times, I hate to say it, but a lot of singers are just blowhards, and they're irresponsible, and they just want to party and have a good time, and and that style of music and that genre, they probably run into that kind of stuff a lot, and it's tough to. You can't be doing that when you're on the road. You got to be more responsible. That you'll burn out too fast.
And I hate to put you on the spot, Joe, but just for interesting conversation, I was kind of curious. There is something called lead singer disease. I mean, David Lee Roth's been accused of that. Maybe Sebastian Bach and a couple other guys. But have you ever been accused of that yourself?
No, honestly enough, I'm the opposite. I always want to pitch in and help. And do whatever I can with booking the shows or hauling the gear, setting up, and I never leave the guys in my band hanging, and that's the way it should be. And
kind of to continue that conversation, I was kind of curious, like being that you're the lead singer in your bands, are you like the primary songwriter, or how do you feel about other guys getting involved with the writing process?
I encourage other people to get involved in it. It makes it more of a group effort. And anytime people feel more like they're a part of something, there's a better chance they're going to stick it out. They're going to give everything they got to it. So I encourage that. Yeah. And when I write, usually I'll co-write, or I'll throw in my ideas. Hey, what if you did this or did that, or change this to that, and do what I can to kind of help point people in the right direction, maybe, or give them ideas at least, And sometimes, again, I'll have a melody and come up with that, and and say, here, write something to this, and then the other way around. Usually in Scream King, it's the other way around. Ralph will write a song and or some riffs, and I'll work with it, and we'll go over it, and turn it into something.
And when you start writing for your bands, do you wait till it's time, like you're going to get ready to go do the next Scream Kings album, and okay, stuff I'm writing is specifically for Scream Kings, or do you ever kind of like think like, well, this song could really work for either band?
Well, Dragon Lore kind of is so new that
it's got their own sound.
I mean, it's not new, but it is new.
Yeah, it's newer.
So it's kind of hard to say that. I mean, there's definitely a big difference in sound and style. Yeah, sound and style. So that would be really obvious. But I don't usually go into that with any preconceived ideas. I let
kind of a sound.
I let the experience try and be organic as much as I possibly can. When I get together and write with the guys or come up with stuff.
Now I imagine since you originally had Scream Kings and then you formed Dragon Lore as your other band. I was kind of curious, like when you decided, okay, I'm going to form Dragon Lore, and when that band started to kind of take shape, I'd imagine you purposely you'd want the band to sound drastically different from what you're doing with Scream Kings.
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, I never understood sometimes that people would do that, you know. That's the whole point of having a different band or doing a solo record or whatever, is to get those other ideas or that other identity out there, you know, and that's a good thing, you know, but it could be a bit much, you know. I mean, there's no point in putting out 2 albums that sound the same, you know. You definitely want it to have its own kind of thing going on.
That's kind of my thought, you know, kind of like you were saying about one of your favorite things Dee Snider ever did was Widowmaker, and like you said, I guess he kind of had the same feeling that if I wanted to continue to, you know, make music with Twisted Sister would still be making records, you know.
Right.
Yeah. And you know, I also want to get your opinion on this, Joe. Now, we were talking, like, for example, last week about Tim Rip Owens and what a huge talent he is, and how he's kind of struggled for an identity, because as great of a singer as he is, like, he's put out one solo album and he's done a lot of great projects, working like with a lot of great talent. But I guess my question for you, like, if you know, you got your own band, but if the opportunity never came your way, like, how would you feel about, like, say, putting Dragon Lore on hold or leaving to, like, join with, let's say, I don't know, Skid Row or something like that? Would you consider, like, joining up with an established band, or would you rather continue doing what you're doing?
Well, I guess that depends
on the project,
largely on
the band.
You know, the band, the deal that was on the table, you know, and the strings attached to it, so to speak. Yeah. You know, I would definitely consider doing something like that, but you know, it would have to be the right band, and I would have to feel comfortable with it. You know, that it would be something that I would genuinely want to do. Yeah. Years ago, I had gotten together with a couple writing sessions with Michael Gilbert from the original guitarist of Flotsam and Jetsam.
Oh, wow!
And did some writing with him. And I was going to put a project together for MCA Records with him and the original drummer from Flotsam.
Oh, wow!
And the material was good, but it just kind of had this almost like a Godsmack feel to it. And you know, I was you know, of course, more of the die-hard, old-school Flotsam type of guy. You know, and I think at the time the guys, their mindset was to put a project together that was a little more modern sounding, you know, and still heavy. And I mean, it was great sounding stuff. And I don't think they ever did anything with that. But you know, that was about as close as I came. You know, a good example. When I was out west. And, but I thanked them for the opportunity and decided not to do it because it just wasn't in my heart. It just wasn't who I was, you know.
Now you got a great story to tell, Lise, but and we'll be talking more about Flotsam and Jetsam during the next show, so we'll maybe get a little more into that. But the reason I was asking all that is, like we're saying, what a huge talent Tim Rip Owens is, and it's kind of I'd love to see him, like, continue to put out, like, you know, a few more solo albums just to see, because like in Judas Priest, let's say the situation was, I could see why he joined Judas Priest. Lifelong Judas Priest fan, played in a Priest tribute band, and he's probably thinking, man, this is probably the only time I may get an opportunity like this, so of course I'm going to jump it. But I think what he didn't realize at the time that he joined up with Judas Priest is, because he was a new member, because he was an original member, the other guys weren't going to allow him to contribute to the songwriting. And you think, most people think, well, hey, I'm a singer, so I'm going to get to contribute. But if you got an offer like that, and you knew off the bat that, hey, you're just a singer, dude. We write the stuff. You don't have a bit in the, you don't have get to take part in the songwriting. How would you feel as a singer about a deal like that?
That would be pretty tough for me, man. Yeah. Because I got to feel a connection to what I'm doing, you know. And you know, I know there's a lot of singers out there. It doesn't matter. You'd never know the difference. They're talented and they can just do it. But that'd be tough for me. That would.
Yeah, because, you know, even as a music fan myself, when I'm listening to music, you can tell when somebody's just doing it for a paycheck versus, you know, really, really feeling it. You know what I mean? And I think, too, that plays a big role if you do have a role in the songwriting, because or even if you write the song based on, as I'm sure you can attest to, Joe, you're writing a song is based on something you've experienced in life. You have a much closer attachment to it, and even it gives you the ability to kind of really sing it from the heart as opposed to kind of just checking it in.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice to have that connection. I mean, it's for me, it's a kind of a spiritual thing.
Yeah.
It's you gotta be able to relate to it. To really do the song justice. I mean, in my opinion.
Yeah. That's what this is about now. And continue this conversation. I also interested in getting your opinion on this now. As a songwriter, you could probably tell me what each of your songs, what this song is about, what I wrote it about. But music has a way of connecting people. Let's say somebody goes to Dragon Lore concert, they pick up your latest album, and they get something totally different, total different experience. The song, even knowing what you wrote about, they say, man, that touched my heart, or that reminded me of taking drugs, or getting straight or something like that. And you're like, well, that's not what I wrote it about, but okay, if it meant something else to you, that's got to be a great feeling,
Right, absolutely, and music should do that. I mean, in my opinion, just because maybe I had a certain idea in my mind, sometimes I'll try and generalize a song topic, the lyrics content to it, and I'll do that on purpose because I want more people to relate to it.
Yeah.
I want them to. I want to tap into their heart. I want them to connect to it.
Yeah. That's gotta be cool. And getting back to Sebastian Bach, it's kind of interesting. We're kind of going all over the place, but if you look at those first two Skid Row albums, Skid Row and Slave to the Grind, I mean, those two albums, they mean something to people 30 years later. I mean, there's those are the Skid Row songs still being played on the radio.
Right.
And even 30 years ago, 30 years later, I can still remember the first time I heard, You've Gone Wilder. I Remember You. First time I seen the videos on, like you say, these songs, these albums are the soundtrack of our lives, Joe. They mean something. They mean a lot.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they were classics, and like I said, not only that, they were Billboard smashers. I mean, they ruled the charts there for a little while, and they did real well with it, and that's what people connect to when they hear the name Skid Row or Sebastian Bach. That's what they want to hear. That's what they know. That's what they relate to. I think that they've since put out enough records, Sebastian on his own and Skid Row as well, that they have plenty of material to play, and I think the true fans of them, of that band and Sebastian probably also still follow along with their new releases and like what they're doing and stuff. But the simple fact is, it was a different time back then. And they will forever be connected to that, whether they like it or not.
Yeah, that's why I dig the fact that a guy like you continues to put out new music, Joe, because I mean, Skid Row could be a band that, like many, just say, we're just going to live off those first two albums. We're not going to release any, we're not going to perform any thing off any of the later albums. We're just going to stick to that. We're through putting out new music.
Right. Well, unfortunately for me, I never had a Billboard breaker.
No. But I mean, there are even some newer bands that after like 3 or 4 albums, are like, what, the CDs aren't selling. We're just going to have these 3 albums, and that's going to be it. And I think that's kind of a sad thing, sad state of the music industry, but it is what it is. I mean, even
and nowadays it's
even worse.
It's really sad, and it's such a struggle for musicians and bands because even if you're just doing it for a labor of love, even if you don't
still got to make a living.
Put the money aside, you don't care. It's difficult because everything is so restricted right now. Yeah. You can't go play, you can't tour, you can't support it. No record labels or nobody wants to invest in any projects to try and bring it to fruition because what's the point? I mean, you can't properly promote it or market it at all.
Yeah.
Besides video, really that's your only means of marketing right now.
Yeah.
Now, if you can't play, if you can't book any tours or any concerts.
Yeah. Now, they do have one of the newer models they currently have. I've seen a couple bands go like on monstersofcruiserock.com, and they've had bands like Jack Russell and Great White and Terry Lewis, and I think they had LA Guns and Pretty Boy Floyd go on and perform. I think they do something like that every Friday night. I have a different band, or some people go and kind of check it out, and you can make donations and stuff, and that's how they're kind of making
that's cool.
money that way. And I think, I think a lot of the bands need to get a little more creative too. Like, I see a lot of bands doing like special streaming things and performances on, their Facebook pages and stuff. And I just, for the life of me, don't understand. Okay, well, people are getting into that. Why not put a CD of it out, or why not put a, or a video or whatever out? And I think you could even like do like, like Chris Jericho, who we were talking about earlier, Sebastian Bach was bashing. He's got this other thing called like Quarantine, where they do cover. It's like the bass player from Trickster, PJ Farley, I forget who else, and they did a cover of like a Kiss song with like different Kiss songs, but they had a recording of his song off of an 80s Kiss album with Bruce Kulick was the guitar player on that. Chris Jericho was on one of his songs. I think he's part of a band. And so, a lot of guys are kind of getting creative with stuff, and I think that's kind of what needs to happen.
Yeah. I mean, necessity is the mother of invention, and we got to invent other ways to try and get out there and get our point across. And unfortunately, maybe it's just me, and I'm at the age that I am, and the era that I grew up in, but playing live is so much of it.
Oh yeah.
Performing live is a real rush, a real adrenaline rush, and that's what I think a lot of other musicians would tell you the same thing. Yeah. Singers, guitar players, whatever. I think it's been tough on people,
on everybody.
To not be able to do that, and not to be able to get the rush of that, and it's going to take some time to get redirected and readjusted and adapt to something new, and hopefully we won't have to.
Yeah.
Hopefully this COVID lie, or the pandemic as I call it, will eventually fade out, and we'll get back to a semi-normal life for everybody, and people can go back to running their businesses. And for a lot of people, that's what it is. What music is, for musicians. I mean, their whole lives are turned upside down, and they're not making any money, and things are ugly for them, real ugly.
I mean, it really is. I mean, I'm kind of thinking. I've been hearing things. I mean, I hate to get political here, Joe, but I've been hearing things that a lot of people think. The day after November 3rd, the day after the election, everything's going to magically reopen and stuff, because a lot of this stuff is being done for the politics.
Political gains,
and I tell you why.
There may very well be something to that. I mean, I don't think it'll be so much like a light switch. I don't think it'll be something like that. But I think it's going to go one of two directions. You watch and see that. Remember, I told you, it's either going to get worse, or it's going to get considerably better. I mean, it won't stay where we won't stay where we're at. After the election, it's either going to go one of two ways. It's either going to go extreme and go even worse, or it's going to go better. And so hopefully it goes better. It's
just the hypocrisy of some of these people. I mean, I live in California, Southern California, and the governor out here, he's such a hypocrite. I mean, he's this rich guy. You probably heard him, Gavin Newsom. We call him Gruesome Newsom. But anyways, he also has a private wine cellar. Okay, so when he has everything locked down, he allowed the wine country and all that to open, I guess, so he could sell some wine. I don't know, but
of course, why wouldn't he?
And the governor and all these politicians want to close everything down, including the schools. They still get a nice fat paycheck. I mean. He doesn't care if Joe Lawson and his band isn't making any money. Doesn't affect him.
Well, of course not. There's no vested interest. There's no vested interest for him to care about that.
And then, I mean, the biggest joke. I'm sure you've seen all the riots on TV and stuff. I love how they say people have a First Amendment right to protest. It's all right if they go out and protest, but everybody else has to be locked down. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying.
And then I love seeing people burn police cars, burn down police stations, burn down towns, and peaceful protest. Okay, I get it. Peaceful.
Yeah, very.
Now I do think, after, because the world, is not what it used to be, Joe, as you know, and I think for, after this pandemic, whatever, lockdown, whatever you want to call it, I think people are going to be writing some interesting songs about these times,
Oh, yeah. It's, well, who knows if anybody will hear about it, because if they don't like it, they'll just change the history anyway.
Yeah, so that's what they do.
Nobody may even know about it.
Yeah, it is
10
so
years
true.
from now, people will say that never happened.
Yeah, it's so true. They want to erase history, and that's
right.
That's the saddest thing, because you learn from history.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. Whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, it's there to teach us.
Yeah, and getting back to like Sebastian Bach, he was, he had his time in the sun too when he was trying to be an actor. I don't know if you ever seen that he did a play, I think, on Broadway, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and I seen some clips of that. It was pretty good, but it was kind of his trying to get into acting, and I guess it never panned out.
Yeah, he went, and people bash him for this, but I'll say this much, he tried to stay doing what he could do, to make money, and support his family, and he's got a life, so it's not like he's gonna go strap on a tool belt and go out to a construction site, and so. He took some opportunities that came his way, and
why not?
Capitalized on them and tried it. Why not? And if they worked, they worked. If they didn't, they didn't. Same with Tim Owens. Why he's put so many records out, so many different bands, and people commented or said things about that, but honestly, it's served him well, he's built a huge name and reputation, and also he gets to do a variety of different projects and exercise a lot of different creative outlets, and I think that I support that. I think that's great.
And again, it's a way to make a living in the sense that he's got involved with a lot of these projects where I think initially the plan was to kind of make it a full-time thing, but then a lot of these they got a lot of these independent record labels that put together these great projects, but then when it comes time to try to take it on the road, they don't have as much money for the tour support.
Tour support is something that doesn't really actually happen anymore, as far as I know. Labels and stuff have stopped doing that many years ago. I mean, you're lucky if you
got anyone supporting you.
Yeah. Right, you'll get X amount of dollars for the record, and that's it.
Even look at that.
Do whatever you do with it, kind of thing, and that's where it's at these days. You're lucky. You're really lucky, actually, if you get that. Real lucky.
Even look at the mighty Kiss. They've been going at 50 years, and they're really an entity all of themselves. They got a record deal, but they are kind of the record company. They are kind of.
Absolutely.
Kiss is empire. The band.
They're like an oligopoly. They're like McDonald's. They own everything they do. They have a stake in everything.
And it's funny because even and who shows their level of intelligence beyond just the songwriting ability and stuff and the talent, but even down to owning the copyright for each of the makeup designs, and I understand Gene and Paul own all that. Even the other guys wore the makeup, they don't own the copyright. That's kind of they trademarked everything they did.
And
that's why Gene Simmons, I was reading an article. He was so smart that even like in the 80s when Kiss took their makeup off, he had the bright idea. Wait a minute. Okay, even if some photographer took these pictures, okay, they get credit or whatever, but that's our image. If they want to put those photos in, they gotta get our permission in any of these magazines or whatever. We should own the rights, and somehow, like you said, they own everything, and it's just amazing. And
smart businessmen. They're very smart.
And see that's the interesting thing about getting back to Skid Row too. Okay, now, well, obviously Sebastian Bach, he gets royalties and money from those Skid Row albums, but he's not the one that makes the bulk of the money. It's the two guys that write the songs. Even off the newer stuff. So even if Skid Row never toured again like they did in their heyday, those two guys could make bank just off their songwriting royalties.
Well, to a certain degree, back in the day, yeah.
Yeah.
But I bet you would be shocked or surprised if you seen how small those checks were nowadays. I bet.
You may be right,
if at all.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of thinking too, though. I'm also willing to bet that like the first two albums, since they were such big hits, those are probably where they get the bulk of the royalties, because those are the songs being played on the radio.
Oh, of course. Yeah, right. Right.
And it's just, but again, it's kind of an interesting thing, because 30 years later, we're still talking about Skid Row, and it's kind of an interesting story, because I mean, everybody's got, just like the Beatles, everybody's got their favorite member, but I do think a lot of attention does go to Sebastian Bach, because he's got such a presence, right? Such a presence. Whether you like him or not, right? Yeah, I mean, see, and that's the thing is, very much like Donald Trump, who I guess Sebastian's vocal about not liking. People either love him or they hate him, and it's right. And it's hard for me, because I don't hate the guy. I never met him, so it's hard to say I hate him. And I can't say I'm never going to listen to any of his albums or anything, because I'm a fan of what he does. But
right.
And when he comes out with another solo album, I'll probably go out and get a copy or whatever. But it's sad, because a lot of what he does these days is kind of to get his name out there, and kind of like, can you imagine? He's kind of bad-mouthed and trying to shame Stephen Piercy for not wearing a mask, and then you could have an opportunity maybe to open up for a rat show and, hey, dude, I remember when you were trashing me in the press. No way.
Well, right, yeah, exactly. Is it in the big scheme of things? I mean, do you believe so wholeheartedly in that stupid shit that you're going to throw away your career and alienate half of your fan base? I mean,
yeah. I mean, it's all.
To me, it's not worth it. Yeah. To me, stick to the music, man.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody cares. First off, nobody probably even gives a shit about his opinion on that.
Yeah.
Second off, like I said, you got people that feel strongly both ways.
Yeah.
So anytime you have, you're running the risk of upsetting and discouraging people and making them not like you.
Yeah.
And it's hard enough nowadays to convince people to go out and buy an album that you did, or buy a book you wrote, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's hard enough. You don't need to make it harder on yourself. Yeah. So really, that's not too smart.
Yeah. I'll give you a perfect example of what we're talking about is Kevin DuBrow from Quiet Riot, the original lead singer. I mean, for years he was on bad terms with the other guys in Quiet Riot. There was infighting, and he was such an ego bag for many years that nobody in the whole music industry could really stand him. I mean, that's how the guy got kicked, fired or kicked out of his own band, which is kind of a hard thing to do. But just imagine that for a minute,
that'd be pretty discouraging.
But then, unfortunately, a few years before he died, he got his act together, and he mended fences with a lot of people. There's this one guitar player he's on Facebook. I've talked to him several times over the years. Greg Leon. He was one of the original guitar players in Quiet Riot before Carlos Cavazo was ever in the band, and he said when he left Quiet Riot, he hated Kevin DuBrow with a passion. But he was telling me, he says, I'm glad years later, before the guy died, me and him made peace, and he was like the old Kevin that I knew when I first joined the band,
Right.
And so that's cool. That's kind of a cool story to end on. And do you have any other thing you think you want to put out there, Joe, before we wrap this up tonight?
The third record that Skid Row did, Subhuman Race, in my opinion, was a really good record.
Yeah.
I mean, there were some really ass-kicking songs on that record, some really good stuff, too. And it really didn't get the time of day and the attention.
Kind of got lost in the shuffle.
The other two did. So I recommend checking that out if you're not familiar with it. Go check out some of the albums that Skid Row did post Sebastian Bach, as well as Subhuman Race.
Yeah, and I will say this: the third album you're talking, Subhuman Race, that's one of those albums that got lost in the shuffle. It's not that it was a bad album, but it kind of came out at the time when grunge was starting to explode all over the place.
Exactly.
And it's a decent.
So it kind of got swallowed up.
See, even Subhuman Race, a lot of it was, I dare say, it was heavier than Slave to the Grind, but there was a certain heavier. I mean, Slave to the Grind, as heavy as it was compared to the debut album, it still had some pop elements in there. It was being, that's the stuff, the classic stuff, still being played on the radio 30 years later. And I dare people, like you said, to go and listen to Subhuman Race. I haven't listened to it in several years myself. I just might go do that. But to me, I think it'd be like listening to a brand new Skid Row album, because that's one of those albums. It never got the fair exposure that it should have because of when it came out. And I forget the name of the song, but there's a cool sounding ballad on there that I always love.
Eileen.
That may.
I think that's it.
That may be it. And but yeah, that's one of those songs that it'd be like hearing it for the first time. And then I just gonna end on this, Joe. We were talking about the feud with Sebastian and Chris Jericho. It's not so much on Jericho's part, but it's mainly Sebastian bashing him. You're not a singer, this and that. And the sad thing is, like you said, people are taking sides, and sadly, more people are on Jericho's side.
Splitting the fan base,
yeah,
right?
But see, more people are on Jericho's.
Not too smart on him as a professional singer or business person.
Yeah.
Is trying to make a living off of popularity and the general public's consensus. Whether you like it or not, I know you can say it's not rock and roll or whatever. You say it's cool to be a rebellious asshole. Yeah. Well, not so much in your 50s. So Bach, you might want to try and grow up a little bit. Just a little.
I mean,
you can still be macho and a badass and everything, but have some couth about it, or you're going to lose all your fan base. And little old Joe down here is going to be selling more records than you.
Yeah, and the funny thing about it is, I was reading like on blabbermouth.com, a lot of people are coming to Chris Jericho's defense. They're saying, oh, he's a pretty decent, entertainer, pretty decent singer in his own right, and and then
yes,
and then Sebastian's like, I challenge you off to sing off, okay? And Chris Jericho says like, okay, I'm there, but that's all that's become of it. He hasn't answered back like, okay, let's do it on such and such a day. I mean, that would be like a cool special event to do. Okay, if you're gonna challenge this guy, let's do it. Let's have a pay-per-view special, however you want to do it, or Facebook Live. I mean, that would be the event. If you're gonna put this out there, let's do it. Let's not just talk about it. Come on, man. Shut up. Talk is cheap.
Exactly. And again, I don't know if Sebastian's struggling with alcoholism,
maybe,
if he still is, and that's sad if that's part of why, why he's got the attitude he's got, and why he's kind of a dick. But there's help out there for that too. That's no excuse.
Hope he gets it if that's the case. But we'll be waiting for the next Sebastian Bach solo album whenever it comes out. But also, as far as the soul stuff, if you haven't checked it out, there's probably, I think my favorite of his soul albums was called Angel Down. It's just almost full-blown on metal. Kind of like remind me to Slave to the Grind, but that's worth checking out. So Joe, just to let the people listening know, next we're going to be posting our show we did on Ronnie James Dio. That should be going up in the next week or so. And then we still got the Tim Ripper Owens show, and when that goes up, I'm not gonna ruin the surprise, but we have a little surprise for fans to listen to that you sent my way, Joe, and I want to thank you for that. So we'll be talking about that later. But next week, Joe, we're gonna be talking about Flotsam and Jetsam, and that's what you want. That's a topic you came up with. So we're gonna be talking about all things Flotsam and Jetsam, and you were telling me a little bit today about some of your history with them. So we maybe can delve more into that. So that's something to look forward to.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Okay, thank you, my brother. I'll be talking to you next week.
You too. Take care, bro.
Okay, bye-bye.